Hi, guys. Welcome to another edition of the Ambition Podcast. My name is Israel Zapp, and I am here today with two amazing guests. I have my friend Abel, and I have my new friend Pedro. Welcome, guys, to the show.
It's good to be here. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you guys. You guys are super awesome. We met through Twitter, and you guys are starting a new organization, and I was like, how do I be a part of this? And then now we're here today. And for everybody who is wondering on this podcast, yes, we are still in a pandemic. And yes, we are doing everything we can to be safe and whatever all that other nonsense is. So go to the White Shot. Yeah, I think I was supposed to say that. I don't know. Go to the White Shot. White Shot, how you doing? We're 6 feet apart. I got my espresso coffee right here. Not sponsored by Espresso, but one day I will be. 6 feet apart. And yeah, it's super awesome. Let's get started with the conversation. Literally.
Sounds good.
We gotta be 6 feet apart for, safety and
6 feet or 6 inches.
I mean, if our governor in California can sit here and be like, every spot's a purple zone except the city where my winery is, then we're fine. We can change the rules as we go.
I love the shade. I really do.
I'm Californian. I won't get shot at for it. But you guys, all right, so I've seen you guys active different parts of the season of my life being on social media, because social media has grown dramatically throughout 2020, especially due to the pandemic. All right. All the memes and the videos about people like being on TikTok for hours. I was one of those people, but not on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, because, TikTok was cool, but Instagram Reels are better. But anyway, my opinion. All right. But you guys, I followed, I think, both of you for a good amount of time on social media. I followed you a little bit more on social media for a while. But this year took a turn for a lot of people. And yet I feel as though that even though the year has not been the most, how can you say, the most, it hasn't been the best year for everybody. And I think for a different amount of people, they've thrown caution to the wind this year. But even in the midst of the chaos, I think people from all walks of life, depending on, how their ambition is, shout out to ambition, pun intended, LOL. All right. They're still finding in the midst of the chaos that they can be creative. And you guys are starting a new organization. You guys are starting a new thing where you guys are not like just being creative on your own, but you're bringing other creatives together. Talk to me about the name of your organization, the name of what you guys are doing, and what you guys getting started. Abel, or actually Pedro, you start it first for me.
All right. So first, I want to thank you for inviting us into this podcast so we can come together and talk about this.
Of course.
The organization is called Kingdom Creators. It's a collaborative of different creators coming together to share a message with our generation.
Right.
The vision really came out of a need that there needs to be an outlet for young millennials, people ages like 18 to 29 years old. And in my experiences growing up, it just seemed like there were very limited options for us. And those options that we did have, creating content through social media, for example, we can only go so far.
Right.
And a lot of this really draws back from my personal experiences growing up. A lot of it has a church background.
Right.
And just seeing that growing up, I had a lot of questions to ask. But I didn't seem to get many answers from either
Those
church
are always
leaders.
fun, aren't they?
Yeah, they're great. So,
yeah.
and I've had a lot of conversations with friends from different walks of life, in church, out of church, a lot of them really asking those same questions. It ranges from leadership, our ability to get into leadership, whether it's in or outside of church,
Right.
The generational gap between the older generation and the younger generation, and also just things that we struggle with on a daily basis in life and in faith. And from my experiences, I've seen a lot of people in church who were once active in church now have left the church.
Right.
I've seen people who are still in church, but they're still asking questions and struggling in their faith. And I've also seen people who may not have grown in church, but they have questions and are open to Christianity, but they're very skeptical and hesitant about going to a church themselves.
Right.
And so this idea really, it was years in the making for me personally. And it wasn't until last year that got in contact with my friend Abel.
Yeah.
He had an idea of launching creating a group chat on Twitter, for example, of creators sharing their work.
Pájaros 2.0. What?
Shout out to the pájaros. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
It started with you guys, and now we're here.
So this started off literally as a passion for you personally. Like it was been birthed in you for years. All right. I related to when you were talking about right now about how there are people either inside church, outside of church, or they were inside, now they're on the outside. And a lot of people, they have questions. All right. They have questions regarding, whether it be faith, whether it be the church, whether it be God, Jesus is God, is Jesus God, all these different, questions that people do have, they're fair questions. All right. In recent years, I rededicated my life to God about 6 years ago. I believe 6 going on 7 years ago. All right. And the thing that I realized is God is not afraid of your questions. Okay. The biggest thing for me, in my second book, I'm actually writing my second one, and I talk about this. According to Google, the Earth is over 7 billion years old. Okay, according to Google, the average lifespan for a human being is about 65 to 72 years old. All right. And in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1, the Bible says, in the beginning, God created, meaning God existed before the beginning. So if the earth is about between 4 and 7 billion years old, then God has existed at least longer than for 7 billion years. All right, we can at least date him back. If we wanted to date God, we can date him back that he's 7 billion years plus old, even though as Christians we know he's eternal. All right. I think God is big enough to handle our questions. It's just we feel we're too small to ask. So for the last 6 years, I've, just been, here's what I actually did. I got on my knees one day and I'm like, God, I want to know you for you. I was raised in a oneness church. And being raised that way, my biggest attitude towards Christianity, Abel and I, we were talking about this yesterday, where like every other belief is not to the same standard as ours, which means they're not valid like ours is. And I got on my hands and knees one day and I'm like, God, I don't know. I am going to talk to you like I don't know whether you're 1, 3, 3,000, 10,000. I want this Bible that I'm going to read. I want you to express yourself to me. And he did. That's how I was able to actually come to faith on my own. All right, in the sense of, the Holy Spirit drawing me and all the fun stuff. So with that being said, last year I went through a change, having a whole mental breakdown experience, which I've talked about on previous podcasts before. And I remember walking around my neighborhood, and I call it the Holy Spirit walk because I invite the Holy Spirit to walk with me. And I said, Holy Spirit, why is this happening? And I legit sat on the sidewalk and I was bawling my eyes out. And I'm like, why did you let this happen? All these different things. And the Holy Spirit said, which is crazy because it's similar to what you were talking about right now. He was saying, I allowed these different things to happen because I love you. And because I want you to start conversations. Because there's a lot of people similar to you who have a lot of questions. They just don't know how to ask them, and they're too afraid to ask them. But I've created you with a big mouth so you can ask them.
Yeah, exactly.
I kid you not. God talks to you the way that you actually understand, okay? Which is awesome. I'll go into the full story later about that. But I love how your desire is to start conversations already, okay? Because that resonates with me. Abel, you guys connected. You guys birthed a dream via social media, and you said you connected with him. Talk to me about how was it when he reached out to you? How did you feel about that?
I was excited about it because somebody else had the same thoughts and the same ideas as me. Originally, like you said, I had planned just for it to be a group chat to where these different creators and artists get together and they share their work with each other. They
Right.
encourage each other, they critique each other, give each other advice, something like that. And then he messaged me and he's like, I've had the same idea for a while now. Like we should collab and see what we
Wow.
can come up with. And then about 2 months later, here we are right now doing this podcast. We've interviewed over a dozen people already. We already have our group going. We're working on projects already.
Yeah.
And just from social media alone, we are where we are today. And it's pretty exciting. The things that we have planned, the things that we're gonna do,
Right.
the things that we're already doing right now, like recording this podcast. It's so exciting to be here. It's so exciting to be a part of this group. So excited to see what God has planned for us.
I love how you guys, how really, I guess, the birthing point, not the pregnancy, but the birthing point of this was social media. The birthing point, the point where the baby of the dream was coming out of you guys, was coming out on Twitter. Social media is crazy because a previous conversation I had, we were talking about the power of social media. Okay, actually, you and I were even talking about it yesterday, which is crazy. Social media has so much power now. All right, it has. I think, and I'm really gonna say this. I feel like social media has too much power. Okay, I'm going out on a limb here and saying that. All right, for the timing of this recorded conversation, people have canceled Robinhood, which is great. All right, they have showed Wall Street who actually wears the pants in the relationship here, right? With using GameStop and AMC and all these different people. It's like, different opinions on the matter, but I think we as a people realize how much power we actually have, but yet social media is the platform that has, I guess, given a voice to the voiceless. It's crazy that, and, not to get political on this conversation here, but it's crazy how much power a social media platform has that it canceled and deleted the president's account, the leader of the free world. All right, while he was in office. They didn't even wait till after he was out of office. They cut it. All right. Talk to me a little bit about how you feel social media can empower people, especially in what you guys are trying to build and what you guys are trying to create. Pedro, go ahead and shoot for it.
I mean, at the minimum, we have to understand that social media is a tool.
Yes.
And how it's used depends on the user. So it can be it can be used for great good or great evil. And we see that, like we've seen that in the last year, for example, how in just the week, within the last week, Reddit users have pretty much made themselves known in Wall Street, against Wall Street, by buying up GameStop and causing Wall Street to lose up to $70 billion.
Have you made any money off that, by the way, just out of curiosity?
I made a couple bucks off AMC.
I made like $80 off Dogecoin, so
Profit is a profit no matter
hey,
what.
I ain't mad, but to be honest with you, continue. I just had to know.
Yeah, and then even going back in the political spectrum, like with the BLM riots,
Right.
or protests, we see how social media was the main trigger for all that to happen. As soon as the death of George Floyd came out and it became viral, the responses from every side of the political spectrum was made known.
Right.
And social media became the powerhouse to keep that momentum going.
Right.
So with all this being said, like it really depends on who is using it and for what, and who has the influence to be able to create these social changes.
Wow. Yeah.
And as we go about this, like for example, with the Kingdom Creators, this is going to be a platform. It's going to start out small. But the way that we plan to market it, we hope that it grows and it builds momentum, that hopefully across different areas, not just within the church, but even beyond that, it can become a platform for other creators to join and refine their skills. It can extend past just this message, but become something even greater than that.
Yeah, and social media has the power to change people's lives, and as Christians, as Apostolic Pentecostals, we have to realize that power that we have just by sending out a tweet or posting a video on Instagram can change somebody's lives. That's something that we have to realize on our own, is that we have that power just in our fingertips with our iPhones. We can change somebody's lives just by a quick word we say. That's why I use my Twitter to try and be encouraging, trying to impact somebody's life and get them closer to God. So social media is one of the greatest things that we could use to glorify God.
Right.
Yet a lot of us don't use it for that. A lot of us use it for malicious purposes. A lot of us use it to creating drama, to start talking about other people. Yet we could use it for the glory of God. That's why we created this group. To glorify God, to have those difficult conversations, to get people questioning what's going on in my life that's not going right. Where am I at with God? Where's my relationship with God at? What's going on that I haven't felt God's presence in so long?
Right.
These are the conversations that we want to have through social media. These are the conversations that we can have just by a tweet, just by a video that we make as a group, as a collaborative.
Right.
Kingdom Creators Collaborative is a group of people getting together to create and have those difficult conversations, those very difficult conversations that nobody wants to talk about in church, nobody wants to talk about in their youth groups.
Yes.
In my youth group personally, I've actually just tweeted this out recently, is whatever it is that they're struggling with internally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, is what we talk about in my youth group.
Right.
Because I know as a youth pastor, if I'm just giving sermons and studies about how great God's love is and how amazing it is to be a Christian and all the blessings that you can receive, but yet they're over here struggling with depression, what kind of youth pastor would that make me?
That's powerful.
So I have those difficult conversations in my room with my youth group because I know these are the things that they're struggling with. And this is the same way that we could use social media. This is the same way that we could use Kingdom Creators to have those difficult conversations.
No, you're not wrong at all. And I want to keep actually diving into the topic of social media for like a second. What we were talking about off air right now, which is like, we won't name drop anybody, but social media is this tool where, as Pedro, you were talking about, how you can either bring life or you can bring death. It's almost like the Bible says this: there's the power of life and death is in the tongue. All right, social media is the new language of the day. It is your new mouthpiece, and the biggest thing, Ambition is not a Christian podcast. It's a podcast whose host is Christian. That's what I pride myself on. I pride this podcast on because I want to be able to talk about things that affect the whole universe, not just the Christian territory. Because the fact of the matter is, I feel sometimes as Christians we become so closed off that we try to pray our problems away. We look at Jesus and we're like, helicopter Jesus, can you beam me up, Scotty? Like all these different aspects, because we think that we're walking, talking Disneyland sometimes, and that everything just stops within a flick of a button. But there's a real world outside of our walls, outside of your 2-hour service or 4-hour, depending on what demographic you're part of. All right. Outside of those 4 walls that you're having church in, or outside of that park service or that outside service or that Zoom chat, wherever you're having community in with people, there is a real world outside that's struggling with real issues. And it's not that you don't have issues within the church, but there are issues that are actually hurting people. And when you're on social media, and when you are known by your politics more than the person that you're following, more than the God that you're worshiping, there's something wrong. When you know more about your propositions, when you're known more by who you're voting for, when you're known more by your social affiliation rather than your Jesus affiliation, there's something wrong. It's not that Jesus wouldn't be with supporting Black Lives Matter. It's not that he wouldn't be supporting a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. It's not that he wouldn't be supporting a social issue, period. It's simply put, when you are known more by talking about the problem, not that you shouldn't talk about the problem, but when you're known more by damaging other people, by bringing up the problem constantly, it's like, how do I phrase it this way? It's AOC and Ted Cruz and Donald Trump Jr. agreeing. You have First of all, Make America Great Again is not Republican. We're just going to bring that here. I'm going to call it like it is. They're not the Republican Party, all right? Yeah, they're not affiliated with each other. Yeah, Make America Great Again, Donald Trump Jr. You have the Republican Party, Ted Cruz. And then you have the Socialist Party, or Democrat Socialist, whatever it is now in America, AOC, agreeing that Robinhood is trash and that all these hedge funds and protecting the hedge funds, it's trash. But then you have, as soon as Ted Cruz is like, AOC, you right, agree, cool, like, retweet, quote, everything's done. AOC claps back, you tried to kill me, resign.
Right?
Just ruined a great opportunity right there.
To unify America.
Exactly.
And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, he didn't hold the gun to your head. He didn't, do any of these different things. Now we can sit here and be like, well, you supported Donald Trump and his claims of what's the word that
Election fraud.
Yeah, election fraud. You supported it, which caused your insurrection. No one in their right mind seen an insurrection happening. By the way, that wasn't completely MAGA. It was also Antifa. All right, those are facts. You can Google it. Okay, for everybody watching, you can Google it. But when you have all these different things and you're like, all right, social media is where I'm going to talk about issues, but then I'm gonna like smack people while I'm talking about the issues instead of just being like, here's the problem, here's a solution. Jesus is a solution. How we reflect Jesus, especially on social media. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys want to reflect Jesus, especially in your organization, but specifically through the realm of social media. What are some practical ways that you guys are going to take that approach? Pedro, go ahead and go first.
I think the that's a deep question right there. Caught me off guard. So one of the approaches I take just in my personal life is that I do my best not to choose sides on social media. I will make my position known, but my approach is often in the middle. Like I'm one of those people that we got to meet in the middle if we're going to have a conversation. We have to be willing to set our differences aside.
So you're level-headed. Got it. You think with logic and not with emotion and fear-mongering. Got it.
Yes.
This is the Ambition Podcast with Israel Zab, where we call things like they are.
Yeah, so like we have to put our differences aside and come together in the areas that we agree on. If we agree there needs to be change in a social aspect, then let's come together and let's come up with ideas, work together on how we can bring about that change. If we agree there's a problem within the church, for example, church and mental health, then let's come together, brainstorm ideas, and find a way to approach that can tackle the different aspects of mental health and the church and their relationship together, so that we can come up with a solution in how we can improve that relationship between the church and mental health. So, and in the same way that the Kingdom Creators will be coming together, is that we will be tackling themes or topics within millennial generation, the church, and then the problem.
Right.
And we're going to be coming together, not just creating the conversation, but making an effort to find solutions on how we can mend those relationships.
I love that so much. I'm going to get to you, Abel, in a minute. I love that so much because the biggest thing that I see, especially when it comes to church relations, okay, on Twitter and on social media in general, actually, there's this Instagram page. I think it's called Your Favorite Heretics or something like that.
I haven't heard of it.
It's becoming very popular now with different people who say they follow Jesus. It's awesome. But we have so many different platforms here where you have people. You see, I'm the person who will be honest about shortcomings when it comes to the Christian world. Okay, I will be honest about the fact that the church has not always been the safest place to say that you struggle with depression, because they will try to pray you through. Not that that's a bad thing, because that's all they knew at the time. The problem is, though, when they get to this spot where it's like, we're going to shandai, handai, yada, da, 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 you until you're dying, and then you walk out and you're like, nothing changed. And then people are like, all right, now you have a demon called depression. It's like, okay, I have a demon called depression. How do we fix it? well, we have to pray over you for 10 hours, anoint you with oil, modesty cloth, everything, knock you over 10 times, maybe bring out snakes if you're Pentecostal, all these different things. And then what happens when nothing happens? And it's not necessarily God's fault, and it's not the church's fault, because that's all they knew at the time. But if nothing happened, there will always be that stereotype, well, just something is wrong with you. Next thing you know, it's you're not receiving the healing, or you're not receiving the deliverance, or this or that, because we've attributed it to a spirit. Rather, not everything was a spirit. Some things are simply something stuck in here where you're like, my father did A, B, and C to me when I was 5. Or my uncle did this to me when I was at their house. Or this happened to me in the front lawn. Or my spouse cheated on me. Or whatever it is. Not everything is just a pray away type deal. So I've been honest about the fact that, yeah, we did make some shortcomings. We did look at things narrow-mindedly, in the sense of, instead of communicating, be like, all right, maybe you need counseling. Now, I'm also on the side of, you can't counsel out a demon. All right, you shouldn't try to. Okay, those are two different conversations. All right. But I've always been of the person who says, let's have the conversation about where the shortcoming is. But there are people who are on the side of the spectrum where it's constantly, well, this is why I left, and the church is the problem, and the church is the problem, and the church is the problem, the church is the problem, the church is the problem. If I could be 100% honest with you, when you're constantly pointing the finger saying, you, I really want to ask for 2 seconds. All right, I understand that you're hurting, and I understand that this has been your experience. If you are saying that church is the reason why I don't go to church, I want to ask you, have you ever had a bad experience at a restaurant before? I think most of us will say yes. Does that mean you've stopped eating food altogether? That's my question on it. That's what I really want to know. I don't have a relationship with God. Why? Because that church. I don't eat food. Why? Because Texas Roadhouse has oversalts their meat. All right, that's what I register. All right, Abel, I want you to talk to me about, literally, because I want to hear, not just from Pedro, but from you, how you're going to start, through the Kingdom Creators in your personal life, how practical ways, how you're going to start opening conversations that are not just eye-opening, ear-opening, heart-opening, but how you're actually going to bring it in a healthy manner. Because there is an unhealthy way to do it. There's an unhealthy way that we always see on social media, or that we always see being blasted through a video talking about how this, that. But how are you going to bring it in a healthy manner, which is, all right, yes, this is the problem, but let's be a part of the solution.
Number one would be probably to avoid the triggers. So number one, leave politics out of it. Anything controversial.
Right.
Leave anything out of that in order to get our message across. Mm-hmm. And if you repeat the question, because you kind of went off for like 2 sentences. Yeah.
How are you going to, a practical way that you're going to bring a healthy conversation about things that need to change, either within the church or within society?
Like I said, leave the triggers out of there. Politics, anything like that. Our politics are not God's politics, first of all.
Yeah.
So leave anything like that. And of course, with the way you said it about talking about how people with depression or people dealing with suicidal thoughts, how somebody would say, oh, if we're praying for you and we're fasting for you and we prayed for you with oil and nothing's working, that means it must be you. That's not the way to go about things. Like, I don't go to somebody with diabetes and say, the reason why you have diabetes is because you're a gluttonist. So I'm not going to go to somebody and say, the reason why you have depression is because you have evil spirits. I'm not going to go and say that.
That was so funny. Jose, can we use that as an Instagram reel? That was so good.
That's what I'm saying, is that the way you approach things.
Say that again. Hold on.
I'm not going to go to somebody that with diabetes and say, the reason why you have diabetes is because you're a gluttonist. So you can't go to somebody and say, the reason why you have depression is because you have evil spirits in you.
That needs to be tweeted everywhere. That needs to be, no, because that is so powerful. Mm-hmm. That is so powerful, because even though, yes, it's comical. Yes, I about died laughing right now. It's so true, because we've tried to diagnose everything with the spirit. We try to diagnose everything with a supernatural occurrence, but in reality, not everything is ooga booga booga crazy.
Yeah.
Some things are literally like, you need help. How can we help you? Instead, one of the favorite things that I love, and it was a previous conversation that I had with a dear friend of mine. He's an evangelist. He's an amazing guy. AJ Holloway, super awesome guy. He said this. He's a mentor in my life too. I love him. He said this. He said, the most powerful thing someone did to me when I was going through the darkest season of my life was not preach me a sermon, not try to pray me through, but literally asked me, what type of friend do you need from me right now? What do you need from me? I think that's so humbling, what you're talking about right now. It's so humbling to sit there and make yourself open and available to be used as a tool in someone's life to say, hey, look, I'm not going to try to diagnose your depression with demons. Why don't we just actually sit down or stand? What's up? Let's talk. I think that's powerful. How do you continue to plan on doing that through art though? Through the art of Kingdom collaborators and all that stuff?
First of all, the way you approach these conversations is you got to get down to the root. And the root is showing the love of God and actually caring for these people.
Right.
Because like you and I were talking about yesterday, is a lot of the problems that we have today, a lot of the issues that we have today with each other, they would be eliminated just by showing the love of God to each other. And a lot of these conversations can get started, and a lot of these issues can get talked about just by us approaching the conversations with the love of God.
Right.
Knowing that these people are going through certain things, that they're going through depression, that they're going through marriage problems, that they're going through financial problems. If we come at it with, I love you and I want to help you, 99% of the time that person is going to be open to talking about it.
I believe so, yeah. I think
And
so.
that's the root of every single issue that we need to talk about with this group is showing the love of God, showing that we actually care for these people through whatever it is that we're posting videos. It could be a poem, spoken word, anything. The root of it is the love of God, and that's the most important thing.
I love that so much because the thing about God's love versus human love is so predicated upon, I guess you can say, what you do for me. If you do this, I'll do that, tit for tat. God's love is unconditional. It says, even in the Bible, the Apostle Paul writes this. He says, when we are faithless, he is faithful. That's who our God is. So I want, I guess, to surround the theme of this conversation for a second. We live, again, social media in a cancel culture world, in a world that is very, very easy to pull the trigger on something. Very easy to sit there and be like, you were cool for a minute, Ellen DeGeneres, being super nice, but we're going to cancel you. Ellen DeGeneres, literally, I've watched her shows for years, and, I'm not here to talk about lifestyle choices, whether as a Christian anything is pro or con about the conversation. I'm not here to talk about that. My thing is, she's one of the nicest human beings I've never met, but I wish I've met. She is. I actually look up to her for how nice she is. She makes me feel like a mean person, being honest. All right, and I thought I was nice. But they've attempted to cancel her. I think in 2020, a couple years ago, they attempted to cancel Kevin Hart because of jokes that he made like 6, 7, 8 years prior. There was a college student being accepting a scholarship for a certain college team, or he was a high school student going into college, and they tried to cancel him for tweets that he sent out when he was in high school or when he was in, grade school, whatever. It's like we live in such a trigger-happy cancel culture. And what I want to know is not only is there a cancel culture on social media, there's not just a cancel culture in politics. We're coming to a place now where there's a cancel culture within the church. What I want to know is, how are you guys going to keep a healthy space to prevent a cancel culture happening with Kingdom collaborators? Go ahead, Abel.
That's a tough question because there's so many things that could come up with that to where we could get canceled for anything. And anything that you post, there's always going to be somebody that disagrees with it.
Right.
So it's like you're walking on eggshells for anything that you do, anything that you say, you're walking on eggshells because somebody's always going to disagree with you.
Right.
So the question is, how do we stay away from that? Well, number one issue, number one way to stay away from that, like I said, show the love of God. Make sure God is our root. But like I'm saying is, there's people that don't believe in God, people that are going to get offended at the fact that we're talking about these issues, that God is our base and our center and our rock. So there's always going to be somebody that has an issue with what we're talking about. So how do we avoid it? It's like a never-ending issue, because no matter what we do, no matter what we say, there's always going to be somebody somewhere that's going to report our post on Instagram. It's going to report our tweet on Twitter. That's going to try and get us removed from social media. So no matter what we do, no matter what we say, it's always going to be an issue.
But how are you going to maintain a healthy culture within your own organization? Like, excluding that, how are you going to try to create not a cancel culture, but a cultivating culture within Kingdom Collaborators? Like, what are the steps that you're going to take to be like, all right, this is a safe space for you guys to express your creativity, your art, who you are as a human being, who you are as a God-believing, Jesus-worshiping person? What are those steps that you're going to take?
Well, the steps that we've created together as a group is bringing all these different creators together, all these artists. Like we haven't explained it, but we have photographers, videographers, musicians, a TV producer, poets, writers. We have all these different people together, coming together in one group and one collaborative. And our main goal is to work together to create content that's going to impact this generation. But at the same time is, while we're working together, we all know that we're going to have these difficult conversations.
Right.
And in this group, we're going to have to get down to the root of what these problems are and what these issues are.
Right.
So in this group, we're going to be talking about, okay, what is it that we need to discuss? What is that we need to be posting to help this generation? So we're in this group is where we're going to get down to the, like the word you said, get down to the nitty gritty. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty. We might offend each other. We might get upset with each other, because we all come from different parts of the world, from parts of the country. We all have different political beliefs. We have different faiths. We all come from different churches, from different organizations. But in this group, we're coming together as one to face these issues. This is our safe place to talk about them, because if we're not together as a group talking about them and trying to overcome these issues and to present these issues to the world, how are they going to get solved in the first place?
Wow.
So in this group, we're gonna get in some very deep conversations. We haven't even gotten into them yet, but I know very soon we're gonna get into some deep conversations. We're gonna have some disagreements. We're gonna have some arguments. There are gonna be some people that are probably not even gonna like each other, that won't want to work with each other just because of their beliefs, just because of who they support in politics, just because of how they feel about Black Lives Matter. There's gonna be those issues that we face as a group. But we gotta remember what is the real reason that we created this group, and it's not for us. This group is not for us at all. Yes, we're gonna grow together as a group. We're gonna perfect our craft. We're gonna learn more skills. But as a group, we came together to impact this world, to talk about these things. And that's the main reason.
Pedro, how do you feel about it?
I would go back to my earlier response on how we would tackle these issues. Understanding that we all have our different opinions, understanding that we all have our different beliefs, but if we're able to find that common ground and work together on that, it's going to make all the difference. Like, if we're able to come together, and we did make this known during the interviews when we were talking to the people who were interested in coming, is that we were going to be talking about some heavy issues. It could, within society, within the church, within our own daily life and faith. And the purpose of this is to create that safe space. And that is something that I know we're going to be enforcing, that if you have any ideas, if you have anything to share, you can share it. There is no wrong idea. There is no bad idea. We want to embrace the different perspectives of everyone within the group and understand each other's stories. And if we're able to do that, if we're able to understand each other's stories, get an understanding of one another in perspectives, and no matter how different we may be, and also find a common ground in which we can agree on and work on based on that common ground, which in this case, it's Jesus among us all. If we can come together and work on that, speak truth, but speaking in love and grace, being able to support each other in the process and continue with that, I'm sure the culture, it is going to be healthy, and within that culture, we're going to be able to produce something great.
I love that so much, because that leads me to like a follow-up thought, which is you have so many different creatives, so many different people from, again, different backgrounds, different walks. I think I'm the only Mexican in the group that can't speak Spanish fluently. I'm all talking to the Mayita lady last night, and I'm like, dame una taco de pastor, por favor. You know, she's like, okay, güero. You know? I have a coworker who speaks really mainly 99% Spanish. Her English is getting, a lot better, but, it's like a lot more broken. And then her nickname for me, I'm not even white, but she's like, hola, güero, ¿cómo está? And I'm like, I'm not white, but I'll take it. She's like, I know you're not, but you don't speak Spanish, so. No, she says it as Spanish. That's how you know she's authentic, But you have so many different creatives, so many artists, all right? You have so many different people who are pursuing their own goals, whether it be in ministry, whether it be in art, whether it be career, whether it be physical goals, life goals, whatever the goals are, they're trying to pursue things while adding on a collective group. With every collective group, there's always going to be a space, no matter how much we try to prevent it, there's always going to be that space that as humans we create is a space for competition. And I love the fact that we're called kingdom collaborators, because we are learning to collaborate with each other. Talk to me about how you guys are going to start creating a space, not necessarily, because there is healthy competition. There is healthy competition. But sometimes healthy competition can turn into just ego competition that's not good at all for anybody, for the health of the group, the safety of the group. Talk to me a little about how you guys are going to try to create this space to be, I guess you can say, less competitive on the inside amongst each other and more collaborative. Like, how are you guys encouraging the collaborative process?
I think the logo would be a good example, right?
Yeah. One thing that we're doing is creating the logo. So we have a team of graphic designers that are working on it as we speak. And the great thing about it is that I'm not the one leading it. There is one person who's leading it, and I love the approach that he came up with in our first meeting. He said he's not going to be here to direct them. He's not going to be here to tell them what to do, but rather he wants to get an understanding of their perspective, their idea, their approach, and figure out a way that they can work together on that. And I think this is a example that we can use with the other teams as well, with the musicians, the writers, podcasters that we're going to be having, that we're here to share our skills and refine each other. As the proverb says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And this is the aim, that we can excel in our personal endeavors, but with what we learn, we can share with our neighbors, with our collaborators, so that they can also grow and gain perspective and have a better understanding of their craft. Right.
No, I love the approach you're taking, and I love how you guys are encouraging more collaboration, especially with different people. The biggest thing that I love seeing, I remember Jaden Smith, cool dude. Never met the guy, but he seems cool. His music is actually, it's very, I vibe to it. It's like, him and Joji are cool. I love him. But I remember he said something, and I don't know if it's an exact quote. I just seen a picture of him, and then the quote was below it. So I might chop it up. But he said, we're all artists, but we're all taking from each other. Mm-hmm. Whether we want to admit it or not, we're all taking from each other. So let's keep doing it, but let's do it honorably.
The thing about me is I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
So whenever I see a photo that's just sick, I get jealous. I really do. Like, how did they do that? What were their settings on their camera? What camera are they using? What lens are they using? Like, what time of day it was? Was it cloudy? I want to know. Yeah. I want to know how they created that moment, because I want to recreate it myself, maybe in my own way. But like I said, I get jealous. Mm-hmm. I want to get better. I want to be able to post my own photo and then have people asking me, how did you do that? how did you create this composition? Like that's the main thing of being a photographer too, like, or being a creator in this group, is that we have so many different people, but that we have like several photographers, several videographers, we have several musicians. So to create that healthy competition, that's vital to this group, because that means that we are all getting better at our own craft. And we're all pushing each other to be better. And there may be a little bit of jealousy in there, because there's a couple of photographers that are in this group that I'm jealous of, because they're really good.
Yeah.
I've only been doing it for about 2 years, and maybe just as a actual a side hustle since October. So, but there's some photographers in this group that I'm jealous of, or there's some graphic designers in this group. Like, how do y'all do that? Like, I want to learn. Like, how do you do this on Photoshop? And it makes me jealous. It makes me excited. Like, I need to learn how to do this, because this is sick. And that's the kind of relationships that we want to create. That's the kind of healthy competition that we want to create within this group.
And I would like to add on to that, because that a lot of times when people think of jealousy, they mistake it for envy. And what envy is, like, they want to take what that other person has and keep it for themselves. But the jealousy that I believe Abel is talking about here is just the jealousy is like, I really like what you're doing, and I want to learn what you know.
Yeah, jealousy in a good way.
It's a healthy jealousy. It's not the toxic jealousy where we're going to try to put them down to raise ourselves up, but rather we're going to reach out to them and ask them, like, how did you do that, and can you teach me?
I love how you guys are trying your best to create a healthy community within your organization, while bringing, I guess, a fresh collaborative effort with different people to reflect Jesus. I think if I can possibly maybe even just put a theme to it, is like, you guys are solely reflecting Jesus and how he would be through a creative way, whether it be through poetry, spoken word, graphic design, photography. You guys are choosing to allow Jesus to be reflected through your artwork more than a political opinion, more than what culture wants you to say, Christian culture or non-Christian culture. Because I think the biggest thing that we're going to realize is that not everything is going to be said the way that our parents said it. Not everything is going to be said the way that our grandparents said it. I remember years ago, I was listening to a preaching from the late Bishop T.F. Tenney at a conference because of the times, and he was saying how, I think either his parents' generation or either his parents or his grandparents, you weren't even allowed to go to the doctor because you trusted in the arms of man. That's why so many people were dying. You understand what I'm saying? If that was the case, if you weren't allowed to go to the doctor, then why was Luke the physician?
Exactly.
Around in the Bible days. But anyway, different conversation. But we're not going to carry the same landmarks that our parents had or that our grandparents had. And we're not going to carry the same dressing, but it'll still be the same turkey. And for all the vegans, it'll still be the same lettuce. Dude, I want to thank you guys so much for being on this episode. And for all of our listeners, though, who are listening in, because we did mention Black Lives Matter earlier, about how not everybody's going to, I guess, agree on the idea. Mainly, I think we all can say, though, at least within this room, we can agree that the black life does matter.
Yes, definitely.
Just as much as the white life. In our eyes. I can say that for myself. We live in a country that does not value human life equally. And we live in a world that does not value human life equally. But we have a God that values human life equally because he created us equally. And I believe Kingdom Collaborators is going to be able to shine that light on the issue, saying Black lives do matter because they matter to God. Latino lives do matter because they matter to God. Salvadorian, Peruvian, everyone, they matter to God. And white people, you matter to God too. Karen, you do matter to God. My goodness. Abel, Pedro, thank you guys for coming on, talking about this amazing, amazing organization that you guys are building up, collectively building up. You guys are awesome. You guys are pioneering. It's so good to see it, to bring such an amazing thing up, especially in 2020. It's who would have thought that 2020 would bring the most creative, especially with the type of year we had. Thank you guys for coming on. You guys are awesome, and I'll see you guys soon. To all of our listeners, if you're on Apple Podcasts, if you're on Spotify, and if you're on YouTube, please feel free. Share this podcast. Share it everywhere. It's going to be awesome. Kingdom Collaborators, we're making a debut when exactly?
March 1st.
March 1st. So look out for us on March 1st. Their Instagram will be down below. It's going to be amazing. Social media down below. Abel and Pedro's information will be down below as well. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, or complain. We'll take the smoke, and I'll send you their email so you can email it to them.
And we'll be seeing our content.
I love you guys. My name is Israel Zapp. I'm your host, and I will see you later. Peace out.